My name is Rachel, and I never thought my life would turn out this way. I grew up in a pretty typical family, at least for us. My dad was always busy with his window frame business, and my mom took care of the house. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Dad didn't talk much about work at home. He'd come in late, give mom a quick kiss, and ask me about school. That was about it. I didn't mind, though. I was happy in my own little world. I remember the day everything changed. I was 20, just out of college, trying to figure out my future. I overheard Dad on the phone, sounding tense. "No, absolutely not. I won't let you take over my company. I've worked too hard for this," he said. I shouldn't have listened, but I couldn't help it. My stomach turned as I realized Dad's company was in trouble. Why hadn't he said anything? That night at dinner, I watched him closely. He seemed normal, joking with Mom about her overcooked pot roast, but I noticed the worry lines around his eyes and how his smile didn't quite reach them. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know anything about business. Still, I couldn't just sit back and watch my family's livelihood fall apart. The next day, I did some research. It wasn't hard to find out who was trying to take over Dad's company, a big businessman named Raymond Joseph. His office was near our house. The receptionist gave me a strange look when I asked to see Mr. Joseph. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "No, but it's important. Please, just 20 minutes, I begged." She must have felt sorry for me because, after a phone call, she waved me toward the elevator.
"Top floor," she said.
The ride-up felt like it took forever. When the doors opened, I was face to face with Raymond Joseph himself. He was older than I expected, with silver hair and sharp eyes. Well, he said, looking me over. "What do we have here?" I swallowed hard. "Mr. Joseph, I'm Rachel Jackson. I'm here about my father's company, Jackson Windows." His eyebrows shot up. "Jackson's daughter? This is unexpected. Come in, let's talk." I followed him into his office, trying not to be distracted by the view. He sat behind his large desk and motioned for me to sit. "So, Miss Jackson, what can I do for you?" I took a deep breath. "Please, don't take over my father's company. It means everything to him. There must be another way." Joseph leaned back, studying me. "Interesting," he said. "I have a deal for you, Miss Jackson," Mr. Joseph said. "I'll leave your father's company alone if you agree to marry my son." I stared at him, thinking I must have heard wrong. "Excuse me?" I asked. "You heard me. Marry my son, help him mature a bit, and your father's company will be safe." I left Joseph's office in a daze. Marry his son? Was he crazy? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't have much of a choice. It was either this or watch my dad's hard work fall apart. The next day, I was back in that intimidating office. Joseph was waiting, a smug smile on his face. "So, Miss Jackson, have you made your decision?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, I'll do it. I'll marry your son." Joseph clapped his hands together. "Excellent. Let me introduce you to him, shall we?" Before I knew it, I was being led into another room, and there he was, Joseph's son. I expected a stiff businessman, but the man who stood up to greet me was anything but. He was tall, with messy dark hair and a crooked smile. "Hey," he said, extending his hand.
"I'm Brandon."
"You must be Rachel." I shook his hand, trying not to show my surprise. "Yeah, that's me." Brandon's father cleared his throat. "I'll leave you two to get acquainted." As soon as the door closed behind him, Brandon's relaxed demeanor changed. He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "Look, I'm sorry about this. My dad, he's got some pretty old-fashioned ideas." I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "It's fine. We're both adults, right? We can handle this." Brandon laughed, but it sounded forced.
"Yeah, sure.
Just a casual arranged marriage, no big deal." We spent the next hour talking, and I hate to admit it, but Brandon was actually kind of interesting. He was smart and funny, even if he seemed a bit irresponsible. I could see why his father wanted him to grow up. Over the next few weeks, Brandon and I started dating, or at least, we went through the motions. We went to dinners, movies, the usual stuff, but there was always this awkwardness between us. We both knew this wasn't real, no matter how much we tried to pretend. 7 months after that meeting in Joseph's office, I found myself walking down the aisle. My dad looked so proud, so happy. He had no idea about the deal I made to save his company. As I said my vows, I looked into Brandon's eyes. There wasn't really love there, but there was friendship, and maybe that could be enough. The reception was a blur of congratulations and champagne. At one point, Brandon's mother, Emma, cornered me. Her smile was tight. "Welcome to the family, dear," she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. "I hope you'll make Brandon happy," she said. I put on my best fake smile and replied, "I'll certainly try, Mrs. Joseph." As we left for our honeymoon, I caught a glimpse of my father-in-law. He was beaming, clearly pleased with himself. I felt a flash of anger. It was all just a game to him. The first few years of our marriage were interesting. Brandon and I settled into a routine. We lived in a nice house, thanks to his father's wealth, but it felt more like we were roommates than husband and wife. I did my best to be a good influence on Brandon, and slowly, I saw changes in him. He started spending less time with his party-loving friends and more time at the office with his father. I could see the pride in his father's eyes as Brandon began showing real interest in the business. It made me feel like maybe this whole arrangement wasn't for nothing. Brandon's mother, on the other hand, was different. She never said anything outright, but I could feel her disapproval in every glance. She'd purse her lips when I spoke or give me backhanded compliments like, "Oh, Rachel, that dress is interesting. So brave of you to wear something like that." I grit my teeth and smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Joseph." Despite the challenges, I held on to hope. Maybe, just maybe, Brandon and I could grow to love each other. Maybe when we had kids, things would change. But life had other plans. On a crisp fall day, we got the news. Brandon and I sat in the doctor's office, the silence heavy between us. "I'm sorry," the doctor said gently, "but the tests show that you, Mr. Joseph, are unable to father children." The words hit me like a physical blow. No children. The one thing I'd been counting on to bring us closer, to make this marriage real, was now impossible. That night, as I lay awake, I thought about my own parents. Dad's business had flourished since I married Brandon. He'd even managed to double his turnover. I was happy for him, truly, but I couldn't help feeling a bit lost. I wanted to work, to have a purpose beyond being Brando's wife. But when I brought it up to him, his response was swift and firm. "Work? Why would you need to work? We have more than enough money." "It's not about the money, Brandon. I want to do something meaningful," I insisted. He shook his head. "In our circle, wives don't work. They do charity. Why don't you start a foundation or something?" And so, the Rachel Joseph Foundation for Children with Cancer was born. It wasn't what I had imagined for myself, but it gave me a purpose. I threw myself into the work organizing fundraisers, visiting hospitals, doing whatever I could to help. Brandon didn't seem to care much about my new passion. In fact, he didn't seem to care much about anything. These days, Brandon and I were living separate lives under the same roof. We shared the same space but rarely connected. 7 years passed, and then everything changed again. Brandon's father suddenly died of a heart attack, and just like that, Brandon was pushed into the role of CEO. I tried to be supportive, but I could see how much he was struggling with his new responsibilities. For years later, we got more bad news. Brandon's mother was diagnosed with cancer. Brandon suggested moving her to a care facility, saying they can take better care of her there. But his mother refused. "I will die in my own home," she insisted, her chin held high with determination. With my experience from the Cancer Foundation, I took charge of her care. I hired nurses, arranged treatments, and spent hours by her side. To my surprise, Emma's attitude towards me began to soften. One day, as I was adjusting her pillows, she held my hand and said softly, "You're a good woman, Rachel. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Thank you, Mrs. Joseph," I replied. 4 years had passed since Brandon took over his father's company. I wish I could say things got better, but they didn't. Brando's behavior became more unpredictable. He was drinking more, coming home at odd hours, and snapping at me over the smallest things. One day, I got a call from Brando's assistant. "Mrs. Joseph, I'm sorry to bother you, but Mr. Joseph hasn't been to the office in days. Is everything all right? When Brandon finally came home that night, smelling of alcohol, I confronted him. Brandon, what's going on? Your assistant called. You haven't been to work. He laughed bitterly. Work? What's the point? The company's going under anyway. Dear old dad left me a sinking ship, and I couldn't keep it afloat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All those years of hard work, gone. And Brandon seemed almost relieved. Desperate to save something, I reached out to my father. Even though he was semi-retired, he agreed to help and offered Brandon a position as his deputy, hoping to guide him back to success. But Brando's heart wasn't in it. He showed up late, left early, and did the bare minimum. I watched helplessly as my father's sales started to decline. I knew I had to talk to Brandon seriously. One night, after he'd had a few drinks as usual, I approached him. Brandon, we need to talk about work. You're barely showing up, and my father's company is suffering because of you. Brando's face twisted with anger. Oh, so now it's my fault, he snapped. I never wanted this, Rebecca, any of it. What are you talking about? I asked, confused. He let out a harsh, ugly laugh. This life, this marriage. I'm just waiting for Mom to die so I can sell her house and get out of here. I stared at him, horrified. How can you say that? Your mother is dying and all you care about is her money? Don't act all high and mighty, he snapped. We both know this marriage is a sham. You're just as eager to get out as I am. Disgusted, I turned to leave the room. As I opened the door, I found myself face to face with Brandon's mother. The look on her face told me she had heard everything. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then, silently, she reached out and squeezed my hand. In that gesture, I felt her gratitude, her understanding, and her sorrow. The day I got the call about my parents' plane crash, my world shattered. Mom and Dad were gone in an instant. Their small plane to South Beach, meant to be a second honeymoon, became their final journey. I needed support, someone to lean on, but Brandon was nowhere to be found. My own husband couldn't even be bothered to show up to the funeral. As I stood there, watching my parents' caskets lowered into the ground, I felt more alone than ever. After the funeral, my sorrow turned into anger.
How dare he?
How could he abandon me when I needed him most? Fueled by this newfound fury, I marched into Dad's company, our company now, I supposed. The sight that greeted me when I entered Dad's old office made my blood boil. There was Brandon, lounging in Dad's chair like he owned the place, barking orders like some conquering hero. Brandon, I said, my voice tight with barely contained rage. We need to talk. He looked up, annoyed. What is it now, Rebecca? Can't you see I'm busy? Busy? I spat. You couldn't even be busy enough to come to my parents' funeral. Brandon rolled his eyes. Oh, here we go with the moralizing again. You know what, Rebecca? Always nagging, always pushing. Well, I'm done with it and I'm done with you. I stared at him, shocked. Then I saw something change in his eyes, a cold, calculating look replaced the anger. You know, Rebecca, he said, his voice suddenly calm, this company is worth about $500 million. And guess what? As deputy director, it's all mine now. My heart dropped. What are you talking about? He leaned back in Dad's chair with a smug smile. I'm the deputy director. I have all the passwords, access to all the accounts. I'm in charge now, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't do this, I said, my voice shaking. You've already run your father's company into the ground. I won't let you do the same to my father's legacy, I said. Brandon just laughed, a cold, harsh sound. Oh, I'm not going to run it. I'm going to sell it off, piece by piece, and then live like a king. Before I could stop him, he turned to the computer. I watched in horror as he transferred a large sum from the company account to his personal one. There, he said, turning back to me. That should keep me comfortable for a while. Then, as if this was just a minor inconvenience, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a stack of papers.
He tossed them at me casually.
Oh, and here are divorce papers. I think it's time we ended this farce, don't you? I caught the papers reflexively, my mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. It was all too much. Too fast, my parents gone, my marriage over, my father's company being stolen right in front of me. I left the office in a daze, clutching the divorce papers. But as I walked, something inside me shifted. I had spent years bending to Brandon's will and his father's manipulations. No more. It was time to fight back. With renewed determination, I headed straight to my father's lawyer's office. Mr. Andrew had been Dad's friend and confidant for years. If anyone could help me, it would be him. "Rachel," Mr. Andrew said, rising to greet me as I entered his office. "I'm so sorry about your parents. How are you holding up?" I collapsed into the chair across from him, the events of the day spilling out in a rush. Mr. Andrew listened patiently, his expression growing more serious by the minute. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. "Rachel, I think it's time I shared something with you. Your father's will, he made some changes just before the accident." As he read the will, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. The company, it was mine, all mine. Dad had left it to me, not Brandon. But there was more. Mr. Andrew looked up from the papers, his eyes twinkling. "There's something else you should know. Your father dismissed Brandon last week before his death fired him outright." I couldn't help it. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh for the first time in what felt like forever. So all those orders Brandon was giving were completely meaningless? Mr. Andrew nodded. Then he pulled out an envelope. "There's one more thing, a letter from your father." With shaking hands, I opened it. Dad's familiar handwriting blurred as tears filled my eyes. "My dearest Rachel," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry I had to leave you like this, but I hope I've given you what you need to build the life you deserve. The company is yours now, and Rebecca, it's time to let go of Brandon. You've given enough to that marriage, it's time to start living for yourself. I love you, sweetheart. Make me proud." I looked up at Mr. Andrew, wiping my eyes. "Do you have a pen?" Without a word, he handed me one. I signed the divorce papers Brandon had given me. Feeling I felt invigorated. It was time to face reality and get my things from Brando's house. I never really thought of it as my home, and now I knew why. When I arrived, I found my mother-in-law, Emma, in the living room. She looked tired from her ongoing battle with cancer. "Emma," I said gently, "I'm here to get my things. Brandon and I are getting divorced." To my surprise, her eyes filled with tears. "Rachel, I know I haven't always been kind to you, but you've been so good to me. Would you consider taking me with you?" I was stunned. "You want to come with me?" Before she could answer, the front door slammed open, and Brandon stormed in, his face red with fury. "You," he shouted, pointing at me. "What the hell did you do? The company accounts are blocked. I can't access the money." I straightened my spine and looked him in the eye. "That money isn't yours, Brandon. It never was. Oh, and by the way, my father fired you 5 weeks ago. You have no claim to the company." "I've already told security not to let you in the building," I said. Brandon's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Then he noticed his mother packing a suitcase. "Mom, what are you doing?" he asked. Emma looked at her son, her expression a mix of sadness and determination. "I'm going with Rachel." "I'm sorry, Brandon, but you've shown that you can't be relied on." Brandon's face turned an even deeper shade of red. "Unreliable?
Me?
This is all your fault. You raised me to be this way with your coddling and high expectations." He turned to me, his voice full of anger. "Fine, get out, both of you. I don't need either of you." I felt a wave of pity for him. This angry, bitter man was so different from the charming and responsible person I had once married. But I couldn't let that change my mind, not anymore. "Come on, Emma," I said softly. "Let's get your things." As we packed, Brandon continued to rant, throwing insults and blaming everyone but himself. But we ignored him, focusing on what needed to be done. The drive to my parents' house was quiet. Emma dozed in the passenger seat, worn out from the day's stress. When we arrived, a lump formed in my throat. It felt strange to be here without Mom and Dad. "We're here," I said gently, waking Emma. I helped her inside and led her to my parents' room. It felt right to give her that space. Are you sure? Emma asked, her eyes wide as she looked around the room. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Yes, I think they would have wanted it this way. As I helped Emma settle in, I felt a mix of emotions: grief for my parents, relief at being free from Brandon, uncertainty about the future. But beneath it all, there was a glimmer of hope. Taking over Dad's company felt like diving into the deep end of a pool without knowing how to swim. Those first few months were filled with meetings, financial reports, and sleepless nights, but I was determined to make it work. I hired Michael, a brilliant business consultant, as my right-hand man. He patiently guided me through the complexities of running a multi-million-dollar company. You've got good instincts, Rachel, he'd say. Trust them. Slowly but surely, I found my footing. 7 months in, I wasn't just treading water, I was swimming laps. The company's performance began to improve, and I felt a surge of pride, knowing Dad would have been pleased. Through it all, I never neglected the Cancer Foundation. If anything, my work there became even more important to me. It was a link to my past and a beacon for my future. Unfortunately, Emma's condition worsened over time. I dedicated myself to caring for Emma, determined to make her final days as comfortable as possible. Over those 4 years, we grew close, healing old wounds and forming a bond one never thought possible. On the day she passed, I held her hand and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Emma." She weakly squeezed my hand, a small smile on her face, before she slipped away peacefully. I organized the funeral myself, making sure everything was just right. Brandon didn't show up. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt to see how far he had fallen. A few weeks after the funeral, I got a call from Mr. Andrew. "Rachel, there's something you need to see. Can you come to my office?" When I arrived, I was shocked to see Brandon there, a young blonde hanging onto his arm. He smirked at me. "Well, if it isn't the little CEO. Don't worry, I'm just here to collect my inheritance. Mom and I might have had our differences, but blood is thicker than water, right?" I bit my tongue and waited for Mr. Andrew to speak. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading Emma's will. As he spoke, I watched Brandon's smug expression turn into disbelief, then anger. "And so, I leave my house and all my savings to Rachel Jackson, with the stipulation that the money be donated to the Cancer Foundation she so passionately supports." Tears filled my eyes as I listened. Emma's final act of kindness overwhelmed me. Brandon, however, exploded. "This is a scam. She manipulated Mom. She's a fraud, a gold digger. She ruined my life, and now she's stealing my inheritance." His girlfriend, looking shocked, stepped away from him. "You said we'd be set for life with this money. I'm out of here." She stormed out, leaving Brandon sputtering in disbelief. As I left the office, I heard Brandon's angry, ranting fade behind me. I felt light and free. Emma's gift wasn't just about the money, it was validation. She had truly seen me and found me worthy.